This is a section of our program we like to call Coach's Corner. There's no better person to lead this than my buddy, Mr. Wayne Bidelman, business and marketing strategist to coaches all over the area, and our special guest who's going to participate. Am I right, my friend?
You are absolutely correct, Joe. Thank you. We still have Tsufit on the line, who is a coach to experts about getting noticed, and has author and written a book about step into the spotlight. So we're going to be including her in the answer to this question, but I guess I get to start it. The question is, I've heard how important it is in today's world to really focus on getting your prospects' attention with your marketing. Can you provide some simple tips for doing that? You know, I work a lot on this, and of course that's what Tsufit specifically coaches, so I'm anxious to hear what she has to say. But the biggest thing I would say about getting people's attention is something that I preached for a long time but didn't do very well myself when I started my business, and that is get yourself and your business out of your message. In other words, I was so anxious to tell everybody who I was, how good I was, what I could do for them and all that. And I like the saying that no one gives a crap who you are and what you do. They only care about what you can do for them.
Yeah.
So if you do nothing else, when you have a message, get their attention with it, but start with something that they care about hearing. Either shock them. In fact, I've got a good story with Tsufit about that in a minute. Either shock them, or you make sure that you mention something first that's all about a problem or a need or a want that they have that they don't have, and then you follow that up by keeping them engaged, by telling them that you've got a solution that they need and don't have, and then you've got their attention. If you start out by saying, "Hi, I'm Wayne Bidelman. I'm a business coach with so-and-so, and I can help you, solve the problems of the world," it sounds just like everybody else, and you're not going to get anybody's attention, and you look just like everybody else. So the biggest tip I would give is, if you can start every time you talk about your business, don't start with what your business is and who you are and what you can do, but more about what's of interest to them so that they will tune in and get something out of it. Tsufit, welcome back. You're still on the line, I hope?
I'm here, and I'm just wondering, I was going to say, yeah, you're totally right, Wayne, but I'm not sure if Joe will let me say that. Joe, is that all right?
Exactly.
Man.
You see, I get this. No, you're right, Wayne, but let me take that a little bit further. There are a number of things you got to do. There are a number of things you want to do. You want to stand out, and I wrote 288 pages about what you want to do. But let me just give you a few tips here. Number one, you got to choose a role in the marketplace. You got to be your own casting director. You got to figure out. You don't go to a movie and the actor's figuring out, at the time who he's going to be, right? Like if you have an accountant or a financial advisor, you got to choose, like, what is your role in the marketplace? How are you different than everybody else? Mac versus PC. Remember those commercials, those little spots where Mac is kind of smug and they show how much easier they are to use than PC, where they, the PC guy's like a bumbling, Charlie Brown kind of character. They not only position themselves as the cool artistic ones, Mac, but they also, please tell me that PC is not a sponsor of your show, because
no, you're good.
We can attack anybody we want.
All right then. Well, let the attacking proceed then. Okay. So number two. Speaking of attacking, be bold, be provocative, shock them, just like Wayne said. Forget about sounding overly professional, because that's what business people, they leave corporate and they think when they go into they buy their three-piece suit and they get their business cards and their letterhead in their office and they think they have to be professional, especially lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. I coach a lot of those guys and they think, oh no, Tsufit, I have to be professional. Yeah, well, you also have to get noticed. You have to be bold. You have to stand out. And one of the ways to do that is by having a story and knowing how to tell it. So I had a client years ago who was ran a speaker agency, and she had to do a speech, and it was boring, and she hadn't had really good reception before. When I interviewed her, I found out she grew up on a tomato farm, and when she was just 8 years old, she used to help her dad take tomatoes to market. And I said, well, couldn't we use an analogy and say some speakers are still green and they're not ready for market, some are ripe and plump and juicy and ready for market, and others are just plain rotten. So she used that analogy when she spoke and when she did her 30 seconds at local networking events, and she had lineups of people waiting to speak to her. And by the way, that brings me to my next point. You got to have a 30 seconds, a dynamic 30-second encapsulation of what you do in your business. And a lot of people will say, Tsufit, I can't explain everything I do in 30 seconds. And what I say back to them is, buddy, if you can't say it in 30 seconds, you can't say it in 30 minutes either. You know why? Because you don't know what you're doing. Right? You got to know. And Wayne and Joe, I don't know if it's okay with you, but I'd love to share a URL where people can get free tips on how to do that 30 seconds. If you go to spotlightsecrets.com, Spotlight Secrets with an S after the word secrets.com, and enter your name and email, and then a second form pops up for permission, and you enter your name and email and country again. I will send you a series of free tips on how to nail that 30 seconds. And by the way, you see what I just did there? Let's tell on ourselves right now. If you're doing radio, if you're doing interviews, if you're marketing, if you don't find some way to gather your audience together so that you can communicate with them again in the future, then you're not maximizing what you're doing. And so that's another marketing tip. The other thing to do is interrupt. I wrote that in the book 8 years ago, and I see that, it's still working for people, whether it's in a political arena or in a business arena. Start a movement. Works in business as well. And obviously you don't want to do, like a boring thing like Wayne alluded to. You don't want to. Sometimes I go to a networking meeting and I'll stand there and I'll say, "Hi, everybody. My company specializes in the facilitation of soft skill solutions in a proactive environment. I'm the project manager." And everybody either looks shocked by how boring I am, or they're shocked when I crumple up the paper, throw it away, and then talk to them like I'm talking to you now. And so what does that do? It snaps them out of you know how Cher said in Moonstruck, snap out of it? It snaps them out of that little thing that they're in, that trance that they're in, waiting for their turn to say whatever boring thing they're going to say, and it gets you noticed.
Tsufit, I've got to tell this story. I signed up for your 11 Secrets of Stardom, or whatever you call it.
Secrets, yeah.
And it was funny that, and they're all very good. And I first of all, I totally agree with you, because the last one I think I read was number 8, and it had to do with the 30-second infomercial. And you said what I always say. It's not, yes, that needs to be great, but it also tells you that those people know what their business is, and that's the more important thing to me. But anyway, your last one, I agreed with everything you said about how you put it together, but I don't know if you remember, you probably wrote this years ago. But you used an example of where at a networking event you came in and you mentioned that you had just won a national coaching award or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, make stuff up, okay?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was driving to a meeting
Then tell on yourself after, yeah.
Yeah, I was driving to a meeting this week, right after, as you might remember, the U.S. had kind of an important election this year, or this week. And I was driving.
We kind of noticed.
And I was driving and
by the way, everything that I teach in my book can be used for good or
evil,
anything other than good. And pretty much every technique that was used in the election, both this election and the one 8 years ago, is in this book.
I agree.
Crazy.
But I got to tell you, as I was driving, I said, I've got to use that little trick that Tsufit said in this tip, and I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do it. But it was a big, what they call an open group. I mean, it was there were maybe 50, 60 people there, and everyone had 30 seconds to say what they did. And I started out by saying, well, in the theme of the election week, I just want to tell you that I was just awarded Coach of the Year. And, got everybody to hoot and howl and clap, and so I got them engaged. And then, of course, I said, well, the voter turnout was light. It was just my wife and me and a few clients. But then I moved in to the fact that the reason the clients, voted for me was because of this or that or some other things.
Well, and that's exactly modeled on the one that I did. Only with mine, it was I think I have just been named, the international, speaking coach of the or whatever it is, or marketing coach, and I said something about the voters, pretty much me and my mom,
Yeah.
and she doesn't really think I'm that good, but and they just may she rest in peace now, but I wrote it while she was alive. So you know what? They laugh first. First they clap, like you said, so it gets them really engaged, and then they laugh with the first joke. And then they realized by the end that I made it all up, but it doesn't matter because by saying it, I proved that I can do what I said I can do, right? I proved that I can get their attention. I proved that I can market to them. So if you can prove what you do, now it's not, if you're a roofer, it's not like you're going to show up and prove that you're a roofer, but there are techniques for that as well.
That you know what I'm going to give her, Wayne? Exactly, Tsufit.